Hey everybody, this is Kit Cabello with Hard Lens Media. Welcome to another episode. We got a lot to talk about, but we made some quick changes to our show notes.
So it's not going to be exactly what it's there, but it's pretty much it.
Yeah, but more importantly, guys, this is an incredible episode. Plus, stay tuned later. We got a special exclusive interview with a congressional candidate, Rachel Ventura, so please stay tuned. Otherwise, guys, let's get the story started. We've got so much to talk about. In fact, guys, it's starting to feel the burn right now. I don't know, like some guy, Bernie Sanders, is leading the way, and once again, wait, you got him? There he is.
Oh, hey.
It's maybe not the most appropriate, but I like this one.
Well, actually, you know what, Daniel? Hey, guess what? I got some news to tell all of you. Bernie Sanders becomes the first Democratic contender to qualify for the Maine primary. The Bernie Sanders campaign announced that the senator has qualified for the Maine Democratic presidential primary. A Monday press release announced that Sanders had submitted 2,800 signatures, which exceed the number required to place the Vermont legislator on the ballot by 40%. The campaign collected signatures needed in 1 day. 1 day alone, but yet somehow corporate media is saying that Bernie Sanders is not the front runner, but yet good old sleepy, creepy Uncle Joe is the front runner. I don't see Biden.
Creepy, hair-grabbing, kids-grabbing hair Uncle Joe. I don't know.
I don't know.
I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, that man is disgusting and creeps me out. So, again, it just shows the strengths of the movement for Senator Bernie Sanders, and, again, gives us progressives and independents hope to realize that Biden and all these other centrist candidates don't have what it takes. Bernie Sanders is the first one to qualify. And you know what? I've been noticing this again, time and time again. Bernie Sanders is the first one to qualify in all of these primary races. He's getting a huge following behind him. And again, there he is. We're seeing who he is as a candidate.
You know, it's always, how would Wolf Blitzer say it? I always try and think that, and I guess it would be Bernie Sanders plummets to first place in Maine.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, yeah, how do you spin the obviously positive thing to make it sound like it's terrible? His campaign is in shambles now because he's doing great.
Oh, I got it. They're going to say Bernie Sanders has misallocated resources that should have been used in Iowa and Maine, where he didn't need to go just yet.
Yeah, let me tell you why this is actually really bad.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's actually get to Wine Shop because, Daniel, I think I got to put you on trial here. You said Iowa. Well, gee, I think it's very important that we actually show Bernie Sanders. And I think I need to inform all of you about why Iowa is important because I think Bernie Sanders is once again leading the charge.
Ready for this?
Well, let's hear it. Oh,
there we go.
There we go. It's happening. So why am I talking about Iowa? And Daniel, I find it very interesting that you mentioned Iowa. Well, Iowa's largest progressive group right now endorsed Senator Bernie Sanders. So it's only about 2 months left before Iowa's First in the Nation 2020 caucus. The political arm of the state's largest grassroots progressive group just endorsed Senator Bernie Sanders for the Democratic Party's presidential nomination. But yet again, somehow, it's not Biden. It's not Klobuchar. It's not Tom Steyer. It's not Bloomberg. It's Bernie Sanders. So what progressive group is this? Well, they're called the Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement, the CCI. Basically, they helped build, they have stated this, that Bernie Sanders, from the beginning, from standing with us on strike lines with fast food workers to touring rural Iowa plagued by factory farms, Bernie has helped build a political revolution we've been building for decades, and we could not be more excited to have him build it with us in Iowa for 2020, said a spokesperson for the Iowa Citizens of Community Improvement, the group that endorsed him. The Iowa CCI Fund plans to formally voice support for Sanders at an endorsement rally and Medicare for All action at its headquarters in Des Moines, Iowa on Thursday. So we're probably going to be talking about that on Thursday, probably. They also went on to say some 2020 presidential candidates have been embracing or acknowledging movement politics, but only one of them has been doing it for decades. Like we've been saying on this show, Bernie Sanders has been consistent with his progressive policies for 40 plus years. I mean, who else can say that they've been on the correct side of history for such a very long time in this corrupt neoliberal system that we have? And they went on to say this: that's why the Iowa CCI Action is endorsing Senator Bernie Sanders. We're standing with Senator Bernie Sanders because Bernie stands with us. And then also the Sanders, they also went on to say this as well: we're committed to using this endorsement to lift our people and planet first demands and take on the corporate power that wants to maintain the business as usual status quo. Electing Bernie Sanders is part of that bigger fight to put people and planet first. And, of course, the Bernie Sanders campaign has embraced this with open arms. It's probably going to be a huge event on Thursday in Iowa, which is probably most likely going to be ignored by corporate media, where they're going to say somehow Biden is leading in the polls. Guys, I want to get your thoughts on this.
You got it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so, well, there you have it. Bernie Sanders plummets with a lot of first-place endorsements. Let's be real. Stop. We don't have to make fun of Wolf Blitzer here. We already made fun of himself enough on Jeopardy all that time ago. Bernie Sanders is doing very well. We've been talking for the longest time about, is he going to take first or second place? And this is something that would propel him towards first. Again, we've been saying for a while that we kind of think that it would make sense, even if we kind of act a little conservatively, that Bernie Sanders takes second place in Iowa behind Warren, and then they flip and he takes first place in New Hampshire, first place in Nevada, and then we'll see what happens to Biden in that time period. And again, I would still very much like, for pre-agreed upon reasons, for him to drop out after New Hampshire, but I think that this is going to take this kind of inevitable factor that actually Hillary Clinton very much had in 2016, that Biden sort of has right now, of this inevitability. Who he's the chosen one, he's leading, don't worry about anything else. And it's going to fall apart when he takes third or fourth place in both of these. And I think that's the only time that I'm happy to see Pete Buttigieg is if he's able to get ahead of Biden, because he won't have all that other stuff or, cross-racial anything, so he's not going to go anywhere. But if he can steal third place away from Biden in both those states, and Biden takes, wow, wouldn't that be crazy if he took fourth place? That's huge. This endorsement is a step towards getting Sanders to be that first place finisher. Because if Sanders, oh man, can you imagine a time in existence, a reality, that Bernie Sanders takes first place in Iowa, then New Hampshire, then Nevada? I don't know what Wolf Blitzer's going to do next.
Right. He may have to try to find a way to argue that that's actually a poor strategic decision to try and take first place in those polls because the black vote in South Carolina or something. I don't know. This is one of those situations where it's kind of an obviously good thing, but you could look at I'm sorry, what was the name of the group again? People's Community Party or organization. It's I can imagine someone being like, that sounds a little too communist. These pinkos, right? He's hurting his campaign. They're gonna call him a socialist.
Okay,
really? What a horrible thing.
So the name of the organization is called the Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement, the CCI. They are the largest progressive grassroots organization in the state of Iowa. And I could see them being a huge player in regards to how that primary is going to turn out. And hopefully they're organized enough to deal with any kind of potential election fraud that the DNC is going to do. Because remember, look, everyone, the DNC is still going to put their weight in this, or they're going to put as much pressure as they can into this election cycle and try and really make sure that the establishment gets the best, playing field in regards to the other progressive opponents. Most notably, they're going to try and do what they can to derail Senator Bernie Sanders' campaign. So the DNC establishment is going to redouble its effort, I fear, because they favor Biden, they favor Pete Buttigieg, they favor Amy Klobuchar, and yeah, you know what? The DNC establishment also favors Bloomberg, but we got to take this as also a good sign that progressive organizations and grassroots organizations are coming together to form this coalition to support Bernie Sanders because he's the only one that's been consistent with progressive policies for 40-plus years. I, for one, am excited about this, but we also have to redouble our efforts because the DNC and corporate media are just going to ignore this, just like they're going to probably ignore the rally event on Thursday.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that we're sort of glossing over a little bit that's very important to not forget is Iowa is super duper important because it's first, right? Iowa is super duper important. Mm-hmm. It always comes first. Lots and lots of campaign dollars get spent in Iowa. The people of Iowa very much like the ability to sort of set the tone for the race. But it's so important because it is not only the first race, and therefore the results of it are what people look toward when they sort of are deciding who they're going to vote for. People. This is a very strange thing about the way people vote that I've always found particularly odd, given American society's proclivity toward supporting narratives around the underdog, right? Americans really like an underdog story, except when it comes to voting. So when voting time comes around, people don't want to be seen as having made the wrong choice. People want to be able to, after the fact, say, oh, yeah, I voted for the person who won, right? Candidate A wins the thing, and, oh, yeah, I voted for them. Nobody likes to be the person who's like, I voted for the other guy, the one that didn't win. So people jump on that, right? So the person who wins Iowa, there's a huge number of people who are going to support in the subsequent primary elections that are going to vote that way because they don't want to be wrong.
Yeah.
So is it fair to say that maybe we could say it's a fair weather effect that we're getting?
Sure. I mean, maybe I'm not a statistician, nor do I know the names of effects on statistical polling. Maybe that's a word they use. I don't know.
Okay, so
I'm just using sports.
Ah.
Is it just human? I agree. I agree
Right.
with you.
Maybe that it could even there's some official name for that phenomena.
Yeah. There be stuff we may not be the experts on it, but that stuff be existed,
yes,
as they say.
And also, as a final note, too, before we move on, we all need to remember that this is an important election cycle, and we have to understand the rules and regulations for all the primary states. I keep saying this, but it's very important that we do, because if we don't get involved right now, if we don't step up, the establishment will play its games. They will try and commit election fraud, and they'll try and deny progressives from actually bringing much-needed change. And this is our chance. This is our golden opportunity to bring forth change. And the people of Iowa, the largest grassroots organization, has just formally endorsed Bernie Sanders. And even earlier in the show, just right now, Bernie Sanders and his campaign secured themselves to be the first Democratic contender for the Maine primary. I mean, this is huge. So with that being said, let us focus and redouble our efforts and keep on fighting the good fight, because this election will be a toe-to-toe slug match between progressives and independents against the establishment. And the establishment can be defeated. It has been shown before. We can do it again. This 2020 election cycle requires all of you to step up. Don't be that person who says that they wish they could have helped. But now we have to move on to our next story. Paul, Bolivia.
I'm sure everything's wonderful there.
Yeah.
What's going on in Bolivia?
America brought freedom. Everything good?
Yeah, America brought freedom, a new government is in charge, and everyone is happy except for all of the people who aren't. And actually the people in charge as well are not super happy with the people who aren't. So the sort of acting coup government in Bolivia has officially filed a claim at The Hague in the Netherlands against the ousted president Evo Morales, alleging that he committed crimes against humanity.
Okay.
What?
Wait, these can't be the same people that told the police, if you kill people, we'll pardon you. Not those people, right?
The people who offered immunity for killing indigenous people who are unhappy with the fact that they took control of the government is accusing the government that they took over of crimes against humanity. Okay. That government. What kind of bizarre world are we living in where that's a thing that people are entertaining as potentially true? Like, what are you talking about? Really? When you're literally advocating for genocidal actions against indigenous people in your country, that's about as Machiavellian as it gets. You're committing a crime against humanity, and the best way that you can come about it, to think you can squeeze your way out of this one, is to be like, it wasn't me. It was the guy we took over for. So I also wanted to point out this notes a couple of other things. It notes they've been particularly aggressive toward journalists. We've covered that before, calling them, the sellout press for being critical of this coup government.
Hey, but that's what any rational democracy does. I mean, I would trust them if they brought something to the Hague.
Right. So the Janine Áñez, it points out also, which is great, her political party in the last election clearly won a majority of the votes with 4%. That's a majority. It's a majority, 4%. That's what it is
Paul,
now.
how are we going to get freedom there? I mean, come on, man.
Yeah,
We need
so
freedom.
We need to free that lithium from the ground ASAP, Paul.
yeah,
on,
so this
Paul.
is just one of those. As it goes through the process that it will begin to go, that it sort of has to, it is going to be treated with a level of sincerity that is not warranted for this type of claim, right? This should be roundly ignored. This should be the type of case that is dismissed. But I fear that because these fascists align economically with Western powers, they will acquiesce to and give favorable deals toward Western nations who want to get their hands on that lithium, that this will be seen as a legitimate claim for those unrelated reasons.
So I just want to ask your thoughts on this. So if, let's say, hypothetically, let's talk about the Democratic Party. Let's just assume for a second that Trump doesn't win, even though that's not an assumption that is very clear. Let's just assume that for a second, okay? If Pete Buttigieg is president, do you think that they'll still think that way? If Warren is president, do you still think they'll think that way? If Biden is president, do you still think they will think the exact same way as if Trump was in office? Because this process is probably going to take longer than a year, I would assume. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be a new American president. America, controls all that stuff. However, if Bernie Sanders is president, or Tulsi Gabbard, or even Yang, though I don't really know his foreign policy all that well, what do you think will be the difference?
So here's a weird nuts and bolts thing about the ICC, right? The International Criminal Court. The United States is not a signatory member, right? We're not held accountable by those laws because we're not a member of that. However, we single-handedly finance all of the prosecutors for the International Criminal Court. So it's in a large part, it's a foreign policy tool that the United States uses to hold countries accountable to laws that we don't hold ourselves accountable to. And in that capacity, the individuals that end up being hired and serve this role are not necessarily tied to an administration. They're not necessarily tied to a particular politician. Rather, they're tied to the larger global incentives and desires of general Western policy, right? So your politicians for a new American century, PNAC, your Henry Kissingers and John Boltons of the world, right? They largely, I imagine, will continue to treat this in a consistent way, regardless of who holds the executive office or who becomes the Democratic nominee. What will end up having to happen is systemic change, including the types of role that the United States plays in supporting the international criminal courts and becoming accountable to them again, would be required to have a different stance from the ICC.
So, but another way to say that is that that if you care about Bolivia, the Democratic primary is actually maybe the most relevant thing to that process.
It's the only thing that could begin the change there, but that change would certainly not be immediate.
But see, and again, it kind of goes on to another picture that we need to, or another perspective we have to look at, and that is only two presidential candidates have actually said that what happened in Bolivia, especially early on, was a coup, and that is none other than Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Tulsi Gabbard. Everyone else has been silent on this issue, and it's very important that, progressives and independents, if we want to end these regime change wars, we really have to get the message out there that there's only two candidates out there that have addressed the crisis in Bolivia, the same thing as the crisis that was happening in Venezuela, as well as any kind of potential conflict with Iran or this ongoing crisis that's happening in Yemen and in Syria. We need people who are going to be consistent and call out government, U.S.-backed coups for what they are, and that is us interfering and getting involved in sovereign nations and their governments.
Tulsi Gabbard and Bernie Sanders are the only candidates that could put the United States' position with regard to Bolivia and Venezuela and Nicaragua and Honduras and several others
Iran,
to be
Syria,
in a better
Yemen.
position.
Yeah.
But with respect to this particular criminal claim at The Hague, the way that gets handled is a little bit outside the hands of the executive branch or our diplomatic means. It's a nebulous soft power connection.
Yeah, but we know and we've seen. It wouldn't surprise me at all because we did that amazing story. Remember back with India and solar and the IMF and how they through their soft power. It wouldn't surprise me if the president of America has a lot more control over that court than it's even publicly available now.
That's not an unreasonable suspicion.
Yep. And also, just remember, what's happening in Bolivia is a disaster, and one of the results of it can lead to is an ongoing, maybe potential civil war, and it's going to cause a refugee crisis, and all this is over resources. All this is over us getting involved in another country because we didn't like the current administration that was running it, and we replaced with somebody who will do what we want. We'll take the resources, and all the while, the people in Bolivia are going to be abused by a corrupt system that's which at the end of the day is nothing but a puppet to the United States. And sooner or later, we are going to need help. I don't know what kind of crisis is going to happen to the United States. I can't predict the future, but we are going to need help one day. And the rest of the international community might be hesitant in helping us after so many years of abuse towards other countries. I don't know, Paul, you have any final words?
No, I think we've very much covered it.
Yeah.
What the United States will do, how this will unfold, it's not in a good situation right now for sure. The only way that it gets better is with someone like a Tulsi Gabbard or a Bernie Sanders in the executive branch, and more people like them in the legislature.
Yeah, we're especially because the executive branch here in the United States can only do so much. If progressives and independents actually take over the United States Senate and House, then we have an entire different kind of conversation, and then we could probably stop these ridiculous regime change wars. But now moving on to another story. Well, let's talk about the difference of two people. Senator Bernie Sanders and Senator Elizabeth Warren. Now, why am I talking about these two individuals? Well, this is an article from Politico, and at the very end of the article, it starts devolving on how Bernie Sanders is pushing people to the left. But for the most part, I will say this. It is acknowledging that Bernie Sanders has been more progressive in regards to dealing with regime change wars and how we are dealing with, and how Bernie Sanders is basically being embraced by more far left and progressive world leaders than Warren ever has. In fact, I think Warren hasn't got a single support from any progressive or left-leaning leader overseas. So, Bernie Sanders' revolution has gone global as the Vermont senator battles Senator Elizabeth Warren for the left wing of the Democratic Party. He's increasingly has been getting more support from fellow progressives overseas. Sanders has portrayed his candidacy as one part of a worldwide worker-led movement praised by other leftist leaders. But however, the article says this, praised by controversial leftist leaders from our good friends at Politico. Sanders' foreign policy views are a clear mark of distinction from Warren in the race, in which their domestic agendas are viewed very similar. Really? Then how come she backpedaled away from Medicare for all? I don't know. Maybe I'm being blind.
Something about Australia.
Yeah, something about Australia. So left-wing leaders around the world see an ally in Bernie Sanders. From Bolivia's Luis Ianco Lula da Silva recently thanked him for his solidarity, and Bolivia's ousted president called Bernie Sanders his ally, but have not publicly embraced Warren in the same way. Bernie is the only candidate who has a comprehensive foreign policy vision to stand up to the growing movement of anti-democratic authoritarianism. Thank you so much. I screwed that up.
We got
tongue-tied. Yeah, and find solidarity with working class people around the world. In many cases, share common needs. Sanders has made clear during his campaign that he shares many of the left wing's long-held critiques of American imperialism, from opposition to clandestine interference across the world, but particularly in Latin America and the Middle East, to disapproval of the American military's global footprint. Also, the article then goes on to state on how Bernie Sanders has been clear on acknowledging that the war in Iraq was a complete waste of time and resources, how he voted against it. And also, the article mentions that Warren has had a much more hawkish approach towards countries like China and Russia, and has been more resistant to having talks with Assad in Syria and North Korea. So, there we go.
I'm trying to think how Wolf Blitzer would phrase it, and I think that I figured it out. Bernie Sanders is supported by countries whose leaders are on the same planet as Russia is.
Yeah.
How dare he have the support of those individuals?
Yeah. And also, again, the article mentions how, especially when an interview that she did in talking about Bolivia, when she has been talked about Bolivia, Warren initially drew scorn from some people on the left with a safe statement calling for new elections. Pressed a few days later by The Intercept for a Young Turks video on whether it was a coup, she definitely said it sure looks like that. Also, I want to point out that in 2013, Sanders was one of the few liberal senators to vote against John Berman to head of the CIA, citing his concerns about drone warfare and civil liberties, while Warren voted him in. Sanders was also only two of no votes, along with Republican Rand Paul, on a 2017 sanctions bill aimed at Iran and Russia and North Korea. So again, at the final end, the article, and I highlighted this, Some progressives argued that Sanders' efforts have pushed Warren and other candidates leftward on foreign policy, and they hope he continues to do so. And Warren, and then it goes on to saying how Warren, Pete Buttigieg, and Biden are slowly changing their positions in regards to regime change wars. Guys, want to get your thoughts on this?
I think I wanted to circle back and cover why is it such a negative thing that Warren calls for new elections in Bolivia. That on its face seems reasonable. There's consternation over the validity of this vote. Why don't we get a good, accurate poll of the people of Bolivia and find out who they want to lead their government? And here's why that's incredibly nefarious. It is, in fact, the OAS, the Organization of American States, which, again, is largely a soft power wing of the United States, particularly in our hemisphere. They're the single largest power in the OAS. They fund much of the OAS, and the OAS largely acquiesces to their agenda repeatedly. And it's the OAS that is the one that is making the claim that the election was not on the up and up. They are not providing evidence to that effect. They're making that claim. And because that statement lends credence to something that is so obviously false and so repeatedly used to undermine the validity of a foreign government at the behest of the Americas.
Also, we got a super chat from Kauai LPS YouTube star. Will Hard Harry join your crew soon?
Does he mean Biden? I don't know.
I don't know. I'll elaborate, please.
Okay, so let's keep going on this. So the big reason that this is a very important article is that we talk a lot about domestic policy with Sanders and Warren, and Sanders is the original, while Warren is, that thing that's been photocopied 10 times. And it's like, it looks like it from a distance, it looks pretty similar. But, it's all watered down. Bernie has the IPAs and the small batches, and Warren's your Bud Lights and such. Anyway, on foreign policy, Warren's quite quiet, and she has been for quite some time. We have her votes, which, just keep pointing out, aren't the most beneficial for her if you're coming from a progressive point of view.
Well, Daniel,
much of the stuff that
there's
she's
something
done,
I want to add on to that.
Yeah.
Okay, first, let's talk about voting record. Warren voted in favor of Trump's increase of the military budget. She did that.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders didn't do that. Let's just even rewind back the clocks even further. Even earlier in the article, I talked about how Bernie Sanders has been one of the few candidates to actually talk about how Iraq was a complete disaster and why we shouldn't be involved in these regime change wars. And not to mention, even earlier, even looking at some of Bernie Sanders' voting record, he seems to be the only progressive senator, especially on this entire debate stage, save for Tulsi Gabbard, who's not voting for increased military presence across the world. He's calling these regime change wars for what they are, and that is only favoring the military-industrial complex, the top 1%, Wall Street, big banks, and the fossil fuel lobby organizations. Also, Super Friday, where's the pizza, bro? Thank you for the super chat.
We will get the pizza when we find out when Joe Biden leaves the race.
Oh, yeah,
That's when we will get the pizza.
Yeah.
Just to round this out, so Warren's in a spot where she really doesn't have an existing foreign policy, and all we can derive are her really poor votes on the subject. And now we can kind of assume Warren doesn't have the strongest spine, let's say that pleasantly, when it comes to really most issues, but in this case, the issue she doesn't talk a lot about. So when we're talking about, again, this court, or just what are we going to do with regime change? How are we going to look at things? Are we going to still look at things, the world stage, as a board game where it's zero-sum, just like we did in the medieval era when it came to Warren and what have you? Where's Warren going to stand on this? And everything seems to indicate that she will have the exact same foreign policy as Donald Trump, the same foreign policy as Obama, in that she'll let other people deal with it who are in the deep state, who are already elected, and they're going to keep these wheels spinning because she doesn't want to fight back on that.
Yep. And Paul.
Looks like we got Audit Press as a super chat, who is a Trump voter for Tulsi Gabbard. Hashtag Tulsi body count. I don't know what that's a hashtag a reference to.
That's a joke with the Clinton body count.
Oh.
Yeah.
And because I guess tell us in the chat, but I'm sure it's with the body chat of Kamala Harris, which we will be getting to very soon.
And don't forget Tim Ryan, too, but he doesn't count.
Yeah, you have to have enough of a body to count.
Yeah.
For body count. It's like an arm. It's like, what does a finger mean?
He's like a 2/3.
2/3 is a little much.
Yeah, you're kind of going a little far there, but again, once again, Bernie Sanders proves why he's different than Senator Elizabeth Warren, not only in regards to foreign policy, but again on domestic issues as well. And this is why now more than ever, when comparing the two, you got to stand for something. You have to fight for something. Bernie Sanders, for 40 years, has been consistent with his progressive policies. He's marched alongside civil rights leaders. He's been fighting for progressive issues. He's been constant with all of his policies. He has a clear voting record. He's been consistent. It's something that we're asking for. A lot of Americans actually are asking for from our elected leaders. And it's refreshing to actually see somebody who's on point and stands by his word. Whereas we look at Senator Elizabeth Warren, okay, yeah, she has done some good things, but I got to take a step back and look at her record. She's only been on board, especially when progressives had a chance, when enough people have done the legwork, and then it looks like said bill or said resolution will pass, then she joins in. But where was she during the Dakota Access Pipeline protests? Where was she when it came time to vote against Donald Trump's increase of the military budget? She voted in favor for it. Where was she when other progressives really needed her to stand alongside with them in regards to calling out the corruption that's affecting millions of Americans? And not to mention, where is she now on her stance for Medicare for all? She flip-flopped on that issue, but yet she was trying to make that the cornerstone of her campaign. And now looking at foreign policy, you have to look at it. If Senator Elizabeth Warren should be elected, will she continue the same kind of policies that were done under George Bush, Clinton, George Bush Jr., Obama, and now Trump? I mean, will she continue that legacy on? And I have to say, maybe, yeah, she looks like she could.
Elizabeth Warren is particularly good at taking advantage of grandstanding tactics and things like this to win political points. Her political instincts, however, have a little bit of a mixed track record. Think like the Pocahontas stuff and getting the DNA test was not a political winner for her.
I mean, she fell for that trap right away.
Right. She's like what I'm saying, her instincts aren't always great, but she is good at winning those political points. The thing that we need her to be good at is spending those political points to advance a policy agenda, which she has shown almost zero aptitude at. Yes. So there's that.
So it's interesting in that sense. I think it's probably a good final note is Warren actually has a very similar marketing edge that Trump has. Trump is really good at self-marketing and kind of creating an environment where he can create a mess that he can do well in, whereas Warren could take advantage of things that, like Paul said, people have already put the legwork into and then say, look at me, I was here all along I was here even though I just got here and I didn't really help at all.
All right, now we have to move on to another story. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's a certain time because Kamala Harris is out of the race. She's officially dropped out. It's a little bit of a Tulsi time. Oh, and look at that image. It's Tulsi Gabbard and Kamala Harris. Now, Daniel, I think we were kind of like surprised as we found this out as we got to the studio that Kamala Harris dropped out. And I want to make it very clear to everyone. Kamala Harris, at least until today, secured herself on the 6th Democratic debate stage in December, and now she's out. So, hold on. Kawaii LPS, thank you for the super chat. Hard Harry, pump up the volume.
Okay. Anyway,
okay.
So let's get into this. So
all right. So let's get started. So Daniel,
this is a really fun story.
Yeah.
So
tell us what's going on with Kamala.
We actually originally had a story that was before we knew that she dropped out, which is this one right here, and then she dropped out. So we're going to have a wonderful two-story story. It's going to be a little long. We'll have tons of graphics. There'll be all the other stuff you associate with parties. There's the pizza. We'll get it soon. Anyway, let's get into this. So we're going to start with that Kamala Harris is out of the race. And we're going to talk a little bit about that at the end, but we're going to get into what we originally were going to talk about, which is going to tie perfectly into this story. So let's see. It's not this page. It is this page. I'm so excited. As you can tell, I'm rustling my papers the wrong way. Okay. As the 2020 presidential election plays out, Democratic candidates Tulsi Gabbard and Kamala Harris have regularly taken shots at one another. In July, Gabbard called out Harris for the latter's past work as a prosecutor. The combat army veteran stated that she's deeply concerned about Harris's vow to be a prosecutor president, much to Harris's chagrin. Gabbard then went on to slam Harris for her work and show how she handled various situations regarding marijuana violations over the past few weeks. Various reports have indicated that Harris's campaign is falling apart with each passing second. The article that was written did not know how close they were to reality. A former Harris aide recently spoke with the New York Times and admitted that Harris lacks a real strategy to win 2020. You can say that again. Furthermore, all of the negative press surrounding Harris comes after she laid off several staffers. Now aides for Harris are coming out and stating the censure from the Tulsi Gabbard significantly contributed to the decline of the latter's presidential run. So right now we have the staff, this is before her campaign collapsed officially, saying that, hey, it was Tulsi Gabbard that really stuck the knife in us. And we have a super chat from Unknown Space Pioneer chipping in for a Tulsinator GIF. We have something we think you'll like at the end of this story.
Yes, we got something that we just found, so enjoy it, folks.
Okay, so now we get to that's happening, and I thought that was so perfect that we were going to talk about that story anyway. Now we're talking about what is now updated, the big news, everything, and the aides have said it themselves. You can attribute most of this to the giant slayer Tulsi Gabbard, so let's hit it. Democratic White House hopeful Kamala Harris is dropping out of the presidential race. The California senator's campaign seemed full of promise when it launched, and by that they mean that all the mainstream media was, again, we were talking about throw shit at a wall, see what sticks.
Well, she made that announcement on Martin Luther King Day, and I found that announcement to be very suspicious as she was trying to build up much hype for her campaign. But even then, right off the bat, people were starting to call out her voting record, you know?
Yeah, so we have that. We also have that we bought into the hype. I mean, if you go to our show on the radio like 2 years ago when we were trying to figure out what's going to happen next, we thought that it was like going to be Bernie Sanders versus Kamala. We didn't see Tulsi coming 2 years ago, so there you have it. But we continue on. But she struggled to make headway in the crowded field. Not like the media didn't do everything possible. Now they're like, oh, it's a crowded field. It wasn't, it's not just that it was a crowded field. It's that she had terrible policy with a terrible record. And we'll just get into this in a little bit.
The word rigged comes to mind.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
In November, her cash-strapped bid laid off staff at its Baltimore HQ and in New Hampshire and her home state, which, again, we called and said that's not a good sign if you're cutting everything and putting it into Iowa, especially if it's a 6 or 7 figure ad buy that your advisors will get 5 or 10% of. So someone made out really well with this campaign. But she could not break into the top-tier candidates, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren, despite a memorable attack on Mr. Biden on the issue of race during a live TV debate in June. Well, I just read this other article that said that the bigger issue might have been the attack by Tulsi Gabbard, but that doesn't have to be brought up. So I've taken stock and looked at this from every angle. This is Kamala speaking. And over the last few days have come to one of the hardest decisions of my life. And I will remind people that Kamala would talk. It was very early in the campaign. She's like, I've never won a race. I've always won a race. That's over now. My campaign for president simply doesn't have the financial resources we need to continue because, she spent too much and no one liked her. But I want to kind of open this up to people. So we have Kamala exiting the race. We have her campaign admitting that Tulsi's the big reason for that. What do we think?
All right, so first, there's a lot of things to really bring up. Okay, number one, Kamala Harris and her campaign, at least at the time, secured themselves to be on the 6th Democratic debate stage in December. And now they're out. Now it looks like Tom Steyer, I guess, apparently bought himself to be on that debate stage. And it looks like, and I'm a little afraid to say this, I wouldn't be surprised to see if Bloomberg somehow wiggles his way onto that debate stage as well, and he's there debating with all the other candidates. But it says a lot about how the corporate media is wrong about picking out, I guess, establishment candidates that look like are going to be the front runners. It says a lot about how wrong they are in polling data, because early on, the Democratic establishment and corporate media was saying that Kamala Harris was a clear front runner, or that she was challenging Joe Biden, and Joe Biden should maybe step aside for Kamala Harris. But again, the media is wrong about these candidates, because if we look in their voting record, I mean, Kamala Harris put a lot of people, most notably African Americans, behind bars when she was Secretary of State in the state of California. And she laughed about it. She laughed about it, too. And even separating parents from their children when their kids would miss a day of school, she would laugh about it. And when Tulsi Gabbard brought it up to light, what did Kamala Harris do? She fumbled. She failed. And, it says a lot about somebody who can't really defend their own record. And Tulsi Gabbard is clearly a giant slayer, and Tulsi Gabbard had what it took to really address how much of a fake fraud candidate Kamala Harris is. And I will say this, at least in regards to this, Tulsi Gabbard is the bigger person because she did say this on Twitter. Sending my best wishes to Kamala Harris, her family, and supporters who have campaigned so hard. While we disagree on some issues, we agree on others, and I respect her sincere desire to serve the American people. I look forward to working together on the challenges we face as a nation. So that's great on Tulsi Gabbard that she's, taking that road, but we need to look at the bigger picture. Kamala Harris lied about her record. Kamala Harris put innocent people behind bars because they were smoking what? A green herb? A plant? Like, that's such a big crime, but yet she laughed about it. And the thing is, somebody like that who works for the prison industrial complex doesn't care about people. And when she's laughing about separating children from their families because they miss one day of school, you're not improving the community, and you're not making sure that people work harder. You're destroying families. And that's Kamala Harris's legacy, especially as Secretary of State of California, but also now the rest of the country knows about Kamala Harris's legacy. And she just didn't have what it took to be a real contender in this race.
So I just want to add into that she not only leaves without any money, which is, oh, hello. I finally did it. There we go. That she's not only left the race without any money, which she can't then give to anyone because really she doesn't have a whole lot to give. And she doesn't leave with any delegates, which she could use to have a sway. She has nothing. She has no support. She's collapsed. She has no money, no power, no delegates. She really doesn't have anything to say, hey, make me VP. A bunch of people like me. Tom over there is one of them, like 10% of them. This was something that I don't think any of us predicted ahead of time, that I don't think many people... Find me a YouTube channel that said that when the race happens, Tulsi Gabbard will come out and knock Kamala Harris out of the race, first and foremost, for the media's favorite person. No one saw that coming. And here we are. She's hand in hand. I mean, she has nothing. Where does she have to go? I mean, people were talking about... I remember Kamala people and her... like, haha, Tulsi Gabbard's doing so poorly that... no one will ever vote for her in Hawaii, blah, blah, blah.
Hold on, Daniel. They were also laughing at Tulsi Gabbard's campaign when the third debate night happened and she was not there. So, the Kamala Harris campaign was laughing at Tulsi Gabbard, saying, oh, you haven't secured yourself to be on the debate stage. So, I mean, it's not surprising to see that the campaign is failing. I just didn't predict that she'd drop out of the race after what her campaign has done in regards to securing themselves to be, or when they had a spot on the 6th Democratic debate stage. Also, we got a super chat. Super Friday, invite Tulsi to Hard Lens Media. Well, that's what we have you guys here for. Reach out to them on Twitter. Say, hey, show up on Hard Lens Media. I think we would really like that.
We can only do so much internally. We do very much want to get her on, but it's been a long time to try and get her on. So if you can help us out, that'd be awesome.
At least before December 25th.
See, I think what you're saying is correct, Daniel, in that no one predicted this out of Tulsi Gabbard, or no one predicted that Kamala would be taken down specifically by Tulsi Gabbard. But I think in some ways we correctly identified that it was extremely important that Tulsi be on that debate stage, and that she would be a unique voice that would bring some specific things. Now, I don't think any of us predicted her strategy, or that it would have anywhere near as much success, or would be pulled off with kind of as much ease as it was. But she basically set her sights on, and I think this is brilliant, she set her sights on one of the sort of second-string centrist candidates, right? Not going to try to go after Biden. Everyone wants to go after Biden. Not going to go after Warren. Everyone wants to go after Warren. Not going to go after Bernie. The centrists are going to do that, and honestly, he's the politician on that stage that she most closely aligns with. So who's left? Boy, well, it's people like Kamala Harris. And I still think it's weird that she singled out Tim Ryan in the first debate. I think part of that was just a fluke because he just misattributed the 9/11 attacks, and she was not about to let that comment hang in the air.
Well, Tim Ryan isn't the brightest bulb.
Right. Yeah, a few fries short of a Happy Meal, something like that.
He's not the sharpest tool in the shed.
The wheel is spinning, but the hamster's dead.
The point is, she came out with a very strong, very viable strategy for these Democratic debates and has pulled it off without a hitch. And it's very commendable.
If it came out eventually after the race that she was set up, and this is something we've kind of talked about, we're not quite sure. It wouldn't, if it is true, it wouldn't surprise us that she's the attack wing of the Bernie campaign, and she has her very specific stuff that she does really well. And then, because let's be real, that whether you're Tulsi or Bernie, and I know our audience, it's a vast majority are one or the other, and same with their second pick. Eventually, one of them is going to join in the campaign of the other. So we're all in good shape. It's all about posturing to get to the point where this really pays off.
So I just want to end this on a final note before we do move on to our next story. I'm seeing in the live stream chat, people are saying Tim Ryan asked for it. Mayor Pete Buttigieg is next. And also people are saying that Warren, look out, Warren, because you're next.
She's already declining.
Here's the thing. Yeah, Warren is falling in the polls. Pete Buttigieg is also dealing with the same thing, too, especially as people look into his voting record. So, seeing Kamala Harris drop out of the race, hey, she's a neoliberal centrist candidate. I think the less of them, the better. And it also says something about the staying power of Tulsi Gabbard and her namesake in regards to making an impact in American politics. I mean, people will know her as somebody who took out establishment candidates and someone who beat against the odds. And Tulsi Gabbard, I think her campaign, she's not going anywhere. She's going to Iowa, and it looks like she might go to Super Tuesday. So, I can't predict the future, but Tulsi Gabbard is staying in the race for the long run, and it says a lot about all these other centrist candidates and who's the next to drop out. Also, Arturo Mirles, $5 super chat, tweeted at Tulsi Gabbard, please do a segment on Hard Lens Media, !
Thank you
like
so
that
much.
Point. So thank you so much for that. We really do appreciate everyone helping out. But now, Paul, you have a major...
Wait, before we do that, we have a new
yeah.
wonderful...
Oh, this is fun.
Let's actually end this. Hold on. Enjoy this new gift, guys. It's
Tulsi.
Yeah.
Tulsi, don't give a shit. Look at that. Just
Tulsi time, everyone.
love that.
Hold
Love
on.
that.
Let's
Love that so much.
wait, one more time. There we go. Hold on. Wait, one more time.
Okay, fine, one more time.
Tulsi time, everybody.
I love that. That says so much. It's so with no words at all. No sound even. We took the sound out because it's a gift, but there you go.
There we go. All right, now moving on to our next story. This is a blast from the past. Man.
I know. So this story doesn't show up in your show notes. So if you want to try and find it, I think we'll try to include it either on the clip or we'll try to amend the show notes later. So if you're live, sorry it's not there, but you can look for it online. The title of it is "A Hillary Shill Goes All In for Bernie." It's on Politico. And so I came across this and was like, this is particularly nefarious. So they're talking about a guy named Peter Dow. So Peter Dow has been a political operative on one level or another for the last few presidential election cycles. In 2016, he was not officially part of the Hillary Clinton campaign, but he was sort of an online social media warrior for Team Hillary. And he made massive numbers of wildly hyperbolic, smear-like. It was pretty disgusting. The word shill is not inappropriate in the way that the title implies that it is.
It may even be underdoing it.
It may understate the case. This is the thing that the article says that had me sort of scratching my head. So he's Team Bernie now, and that's true. And I noticed this a couple of months ago. He started tweeting about he likes Bernie Sanders. That he's come around to this opinion. And I'm like, this dude really? He trolled people real bad. He was one of the worst social media, smear the Bernie bros type people. And he came around to it. And I noticed this. So he says, I was a vocal Hillary Clinton supporter, and now I've moved to a position where I think that the Democratic Party establishment needs to change, Dow told Politico. He mentions that it's essentially the process, right? I'm missing the correct quote. Where is it? Under Obama, Democrats lost ground to the far right. We had the House and the Senate and the Supreme Court, and things were more balanced than it is today, and yet we're caging children at the border, he said. It's like, right, but that happened under Obama. Anyway, he said he now believes that the most effective way to accomplish real change is through movement politics, which is partly why he praises his former foe. Quote, Sanders is the only candidate who has sparked a true movement. All right, so this guy is switching teams. You're telling me, Politico, hey, this Peter Dow guy, he used to be a shill. He used to like say all these things, Hillary supporter, and he used to be super anti-Bernie Sanders and said all these horrible things. But he's changed his mind because he realized that, the system requires systemic change, and Bernie is the candidate trying to do that. And I'm going, hold the phone, dude. Your entire political transformation is that you think Bernie has a better strategy? Like, I agree we need systemic change. I agree he has the better strategy, but the reason I support him is not because his strategy is better or because we had more House and Senate seats under Obama or we began to lose them under the Obama era or whatever your argument is. It's not a strategy. It is a political ideology question, right? I like the policies he wants.
Yeah.
You do not speak to the policies he's advocating for here. And the thing that kept going in the back of my mind is like, I know this name. Like, I remember him saying some pretty disingenuous, pretty horrible, smeary things online during the 2016 campaign. And then I remember we did a story back when we were on radio.
Yeah, way back.
Way
I think
back.
it was like the early part of the 2018 midterm election cycle.
Right. We did this story on this new website that was making news stories that, back when people were first like, oh no, there's fake news and the Russians are planting fake news stories. And this guy's like, we'll make a website that verifies the news stories. The people that know that if it comes from this website, it's totally true. And everyone went, but you're just basically asking people to trust you. There's nothing about putting a number on your story or putting it in this particular. It was called, sorry, I had it up on the computer over there. Verit. It was called Verit.
Yeah.
He single-handedly started this new verified news website that was full of like pro-Hillary Clinton campaign stuff, very like
Anti-Russia.
smeary. Like there was a lot of stuff that was in it that was demonstrably not true, and he's billing this as the source of true news, verified news. That website shut down within a matter of weeks. It was a monumental failure. And I'm saying, my greater point is that what intent does Politico, a website that we find has genuinely very little to offer political discourse in the contemporary era, that seems to advocate for the already established power and to shame those that don't go along with that? Why do we want to trust them when they're saying, hey, here's this Bernie Sanders supporter, he came around, he used to like Hillary, now he likes Bernie, and I go, all right, Peter Dow, we appreciate your vote. You know what we don't need? I don't think we need your voice. I think your voice specifically isn't helpful. Maybe you really do believe this. Maybe you really do support Bernie Sanders. But I am not about to tell anyone to go out and listen to what you have to say, because you do not have a track record that shows that you make statements or arguments in good faith. So sorry, dude.
Yeah.
So this is to go into this further. That this is a guy. It's called Verit. He's a ferret. Let's be real. This is a guy who, what is his track record? Is I'm going to be a big operative and literally do like psyop, like everything that the Democratic Party is accusing Russia of. This guy is an American equivalent of internally within America. This is a guy who, like Paul said, I mean, trolling. There's he was heinous towards people. He was horrendous. He's a terrible person, not because of the side he was on. That has less to do with it than much else. It's how he conducts business, and he conducts business with the most underhanded ways. If I would even say that having him on Bernie Sanders' side is detrimental to Bernie Sanders because of the kind of tools that he uses to get things done.
Yeah.
He is the kind of guy that would do things that are for Bernie, and then the news will go, Bernie Sanders' delegate Peter
Look at the
Dow.
horrible thing
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders supporters are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he literally feels like almost like a metaphorical suicide bomber who's like, hey, I'm a Bernie bro now. Look at me. It's fantastic. I'm with Bernie Sanders. Tell me some of that information that's not public.
Yeah, he's definitely not trying to infiltrate the campaign.
Hold on. I also want to say this, too. This also shows that the remnants of the Russiagate fear, especially those that were really pumping out all the Russiagate smears and how Russia's trying to influence our media, he is a prime example of why we need to be careful how this 2020 election cycle is going to turn out, because there are people who still blame Senator Bernie Sanders for Clinton's loss, even though she was a horrible candidate. She didn't have a message, and that anyone who dared show any ounce of criticism towards former Secretary Hillary Clinton, they were denounced as trolls, Trump supporters, Russia supporters. Bernie bros, exactly, the most famous one of them all. And, the thing is that this is a problem that I see slowly creeping into this 2020 election cycle. And, yeah, I'm glad that he's saying, yeah, Bernie Sanders is the man with the plan, and Bernie Sanders should be the leading candidate, and I support Bernie. But all of a sudden, the alarm bells were ringing off and thinking, wait, there's something else to this. And I could see an insidious game being played because all these people that were promoting Russiagate fears still want to remain relevant and still want to have some kind of power in this new age of media and social media.
Peter Dow, we appreciate the vote. Keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, there we go. So we're going to be ending the show, but we're just going to be taking a quick short break. We'll have a congressional candidate, Rachel Ventura, who's running in the Illinois 11th congressional district.
We also have a super chat that we've been saving.
Yes, we do. So Denise Gibson, you asked this. Denise Gibson, 53, $10 super chat. How can she continue? Oops, hold on, that went past real quick. How can she continue if she's not allowed into the next debate stage where there's a blackout on her? And I know you're probably talking about Tulsi Gabbard. And so here's my response to that. Remember, Tulsi Gabbard didn't make it onto the third debate stage, but she did make it to the fourth and fifth. And I see Tulsi Gabbard still not going anywhere. She still is a relevant player in this game. Also,
while you're looking that up, before you read that,
go ahead.
Just to your point, Denise, Tulsi doesn't need the debates at this point. What's she going to do? She'll take down Pete Buttigieg, a peg, which would be wonderful. She'll take someone down, giant sleigh, do her thing. But she's at a point where she's at, you can say anywhere from 2 to 6%, depending on what polls you're looking at. And she's going to, if she doesn't go on the debate, she will be able to fundraise off of it and raise hell and do something. And if she gets on the debate, she'll be fine. I don't think it matters for her. They're going to give her 5 minutes of time anyway. Well, she doesn't need it. She doesn't need it. And also, on top of that, first debate, 26 or so million viewers. Last debate we just covered, 6 million viewers.
Yeah, the
it's
debates
not
are
like
demeaning.
anyone's going to be watching anyway. It's not going to have the same effect as it used to. It's going to be when the crowd.
It's all about the ground game now.
Yeah,
it's
all about the ground game and who has the biggest and strongest message. And Tulsi Gabbard, look, she said it, Bernie Sanders said it on Joe Rogan's show, that the debates are demeaning. And we already know that the moderators have it out against progressives like Bernie Sanders, like Tulsi Gabbard. Hell, they didn't even let Andrew Yang even speak.
You mean John Yang, right?
Yeah, I don't know. There we go. So also, we got a super chat from Linda Lee Yu, 123. Yang don't take on the billionaires. They're successful. Russia's crawling at our underbelly. The guy for a new Cold War and trillionaires. Woo. Okay, well, thank you for the super chat, but I don't know what's that all about. So there we go.
Are there any trillionaires yet? I don't think there are any trillionaires yet.
You know when there'll be the first trillionaire? And I'm sad to say, when space mining happens. That's when we get the first trillionaire.
Maybe.
Maybe. The space
for sure.
Stuff. So with that being,
one rock is worth 17 trillion. 5% of that.
I'm gonna go find a rock.
All right. So with that being said, though, we are going to be taking a short break, but we want to let everyone know, our viewers and subscribers, that YouTube is unsubscribing people. So please double check and triple check that you're subscribed. Every Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time is when we go live. But if you want to help out the channel, help us grow, get better gear, get better video equipment, audio equipment, please consider being a Patreon supporter. Your support will really help us out. And one of the perks is that we get to read your names. So shout out to Myra Sanchez, Ishmael Rufus, Carlos Rosero, Alan Marone, Pian Timpson, Judy Monroe, Gregory Church, Kieran McCown, Cassie Lloyd, Denise Gibson, Unknown Space Pioneer, Lawrence Johnson, Michael, Midwest Toker, Chase, Sandra N. Grayson, NC Schaffner, Anthony Nelson, Teresa Collins, Brittany Cabrera, Desmond Turek, Jack Moore, Sandra Mayer, Giffy, Lewis, Ariana Hinson, Michael Ealing, Emily, Eric Unger, Free Thinker 59, Todd Adams, Ramon Lazo, Carrie Barber, Alexis Haas, Aaron Steinwolf, Lucy Grever Conroy, Ofri Edward Owens, Mike Concho, Andrew Eck, Denise McCartney, Lance Vera, Mark Lloyd Baker, Mike Terminite, Roy Hartley, Tina Krauts, Cherry Tyler, Michael Helt, Sally, Tiffany Lee, Ashwin Ruvigmar, Walud Demooney, Dick Newell, Anthony D'Angelo, Rena Q, Jeff, Fred Edward, Akbash Akita, Maya Jones, Julie, Melise Sharowski, Kate, Jeff Green, Susan Singer, Deanne Svutet, Kai Arnold, Brian Thomas, Dimitri N, Kyle Aspa, Jack Papula, Tony Watches Closely, Burns Lawler, Chrome Magnan Gramps, Jimmy Coutura, John Sedilla, Christian McMasters, Freebird 1969, Gumdrops, JH, Jackie McCaffrey, Jose Manuel, Nancy Kreutz, and shout out to Wesley Wiles, who's been introducing us to so many congressional candidates. To all you guys, our viewers and subscribers, thank you for helping us build this channel up. We are continuing to grow, and we have an exclusive interview in just a few short minutes, so stay tuned, don't go anywhere, enjoy the music. Hey everyone, this is Kit Cabela with Hard Lens Media. Look, we're introducing a lot of you guys to a lot of congressional candidates that are trying to bring in much needed political reform and change into our corrupted system. And I'm proud to introduce a congressional candidate that's from my own home state, the state of Illinois. Rachel Ventura, you are running for the 11th congressional district here in the state of Illinois. For our viewers and subscribers, can you give us a background to who you are and why you're running in this race?
Yes, so I'm a single mom, a mathematician, a naturalist, and I currently serve on the Will County Board. And I got into this race unexpectedly this February. I went to our current Congressman, Bill Foster, and I asked him to support the Medicare for All JPL bill that was introduced into the House. And after several months of runaround, he turned it down and said that he was going to be supporting ACA, even though 29 million Americans are uninsured and almost 40 million Americans are underinsured. And the number one reason for bankruptcy in the country right now is healthcare costs. As someone who worked as an actuary in the insurance field, I know exactly how horrible our for-profit industry is. But then it was in June when he turned down the Green New Deal and said it was not a solution. Now, he's known as a scientist in office, so we thought he would be the forefront leader of this. But instead, he's now taking fossil fuel money and supporting a bill called the Use It Act, which uses our taxpayer dollars to try and build infrastructure unproven to then take carbon and inject it into the ground like fracking so that it's more profitable for the oil companies to extract oil. And our taxpayer dollars need to be going towards the Green New Deal, which is a $16 trillion job package. It puts Americans back to work. It gets us off of fossil fuels, and it's the wave of the future. It will solve so many problems that we're seeing in America, and for him to turn his back, that's worse than a climate denier. So I entered the race.
Yeah, that sounds all too familiar to what we're see time and time again, especially with these corrupt Democratic leaders that are running for office. And the one thing I have to say is when it comes down to this race, I think a lot of our viewers and subscribers are kind of unfamiliar to how Illinois politics works. Is what is the influence of the DNC and the DCCC as well as the Illinois Democratic machine weighing in on this race? Because we've interviewed a lot of other congressional candidates that are running, and we've heard the same story that the DCCC is saying, well, we're supporting the incumbent. We're not supporting any progressives or independents that are challenging our incumbent. And if you are going to do this, you're not going to get any support. So have you received any pushback from the Illinois Democratic machine, the DCCC, or anyone within the DNC establishment about your campaign and this clear, important race for this for the 11th congressional district?
Yeah, so 2 points on that. The first point is, yes, the DCCC saying not to challenge incumbents has been a problem, but not in the consultants. And that's the second point is, we weren't going to the moderate Democrats to solve our problem. We're going to people who want to change the system, progressive Democrats, volunteers who have never been involved in politics before, and finding consultants who are willing to, fight for the same thing we're fighting for. They aren't taking corporate PAC dollars and they're not the status quo. But on the first point I made is the problem has been then the party hasn't given us access to voter files, for example, and we've had to pay thousands of dollars to get access and thousands of more dollars to get phone numbers, whereas the incumbent has access to these things. And we're both Democrats, born and raised. I've never been anything but a Democrat, so it doesn't make sense that he has that leg up just because he's an incumbent. I'm an elected official as well, and now I can't have access to these files.
All right. So then looking at the current incumbent, how long has he been in office? And then number two, what has been his interaction with the community? Because I find it surprising that, this Democrat, mind you, we hear from corporate media that the Democrats are the resistance against Trump and that they believe in all these great ideals, but only pragmatically, because apparently he's not for Medicare for all. He's against the Green New Deal. What has been his interaction with the community and how long has he been in office? Because I think a lot of people should know what he represents and really what does he do with his time at being a congressman in the 11th congressional district.
Yeah, so he is serving his 6th term now. So he's about 11 years in, and he's full of inaction at the end of the day. And we're in a very strong Democratic district. We're D+9, and so this is a fight that's going to be fought in the primaries. And the question that voters need to ask themselves is, what shade of blue do they want their Democrats? What systems do they want in place? They want the broken systems that our status quo has continued to push, or do they want a system that works for everyone, a government, an economy that works for everyone? And are they going to elect progressive Democrats who are willing to say, enough with bought and paid for politicians? We want someone to represent us, the voice of the people.
All right. Now, when you're out there canvassing, because apparently, your campaign is spending thousands of dollars just to actually get, voter access so that you can, get your message out there. So when your campaign is out there canvassing and knocking on people's doors, what is the initial reaction when people hear that you're challenging the incumbent?
A lot of people don't know about this 6th-term congressman, and that's good for us. But it also shows the inaction over the 11 years he's been in office of not actually doing anything that's helping the people. We have a very diverse system, cities here. We've got Joliet and Aurora, which are the 2nd and 3rd largest cities in Illinois. And then they've got a downturn economy, an average of $30,000 per year. Not very much. It's hard to make ends meet. As a single mom, I get that. I work 2 jobs currently. But then on the flip side of that, we have a very affluent area. Naperville is one of the richest places in America, salary-wise. They bring in $122,000 in a salary. So when you average that out, it looks like we're middle of the road. But there's some great disparities there. And at the end of the day, voters feel like these systems aren't working for them because they're not. And so we do need to have someone in there who's going to shake things up, provide Medicare for all, because healthcare is a human right. We need to have good jobs so that places like Joliet and Aurora can, better improve our Main Street jobs, $15 minimum wage index to inflation. These are things that Americans need. And it's really an economic package that's going to fix this, not a right or left issue. It comes down to the money. And when our money is being, we're paying off politicians so the rich can get rich, then the poor get poor. And we need to change that.
Now, you mentioned that there's a great disparity between, people who have income and people who have a greater portion of wealth. So when we look at some of the situations that are impacting the people in the 11th congressional district, I just can't help but be reminded of the budgetary crisis that the state of Illinois dealt with when former Governor Bruce Rauner and Speaker of the House Michael Madigan were basically fighting each other over the budget. And of course, that impacted a lot of communities all across the state of Illinois. So what has been the long-term impact, at least in the 11th congressional district, and how are people still getting by? Because, still people are reeling, and a lot of institutions are still reeling from the fact that for a very long time, the state of Illinois didn't have a budget.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing the fallout of that. Currently, the CTU, the teachers, they went on strike recently. Today was our vote for our teachers in the District 86 in Joliet to see if they've adopted a budget, a new contract. People went without pay, our roads, being destroyed. They're still, trying to fix that now with the capital bill. They're pushing for progressive tax because at the end of the day, we're not able to balance our budget. There are things that they've changed in the state, like allowing gambling in more areas, pushing for the marijuana tax. Now, I'm in favor of legalizing marijuana, but there are some very serious issues with our budget because of those years that we didn't have that. And it'll be interesting to see if our teachers go on strike. But it's directly tied to some of our local economy that I was talking about. So we've got the largest inland port in our backyard, and we gave $29 million in tax abatements over the last 11 years to Amazon. And that's just only one of the warehouses that we have here. They're looking to bring in another 2,200 acres of warehousing, which they use temp agencies that have cheap labor, wage theft, poor working conditions. And, we're considered a prison town. So there are people here who have to take those jobs because unfortunately our broken system of, criminal justice is once you've served your time, unfortunately, you're not able to just go back into society. Your things are held, they're discriminated against between having that past record. And so we need to be able to seal records to employers and to landlords so that people who serve their time can come out and get a good paying job. Instead, they're preyed upon by these temp agencies and low paying jobs like these warehouses. And we need to have a better system in place economically for everybody who lives in America.
All right. Now, you mentioned cannabis and you're in support of its legalization, but also on your campaign website, you also talk about decriminalizing it. So there's a potential chance that you could win this primary and go on to the general election. So how are you going to really help institute at least support of the legalization and decriminalization of cannabis at the national level? Because here in our state on January 1st in 2020, it will be legal in our state, but the rest of the country is still, believe it, or it still holds on to the stagnant belief that that cannabis is this horrible drug and that we need to support the war on drugs. It's in favor of the top establishment, especially those within the DNC and RNC. How are you going to help to fight decriminalize it and also make sure it's legal for everyone to use at their own free will?
Well, I do think by getting money out of politics and by passing Medicare for all, it will change some of that, because right now we've got a pharmaceutical company that runs so many of our policies, and that fear factor and, that sending the information out there. But the stats of it has been that, marijuana, you can't OD on marijuana. We've got an opioid epidemic in this country. And by legalizing marijuana, people who need a pain management system can turn to marijuana. But you can't do that when billions of dollars are being spent on fear, on poor advertising, on miscommunication and propaganda. So I think, right off the bat, passing Medicare for all and being able to have alternative medicine available to every state is important. But also we saw it with the ERA. You get enough states, 36 states to pass it, then, now you can make it legal for the whole country. So I think there are a couple of avenues to go about that. But the best avenue, of course, is winning races like mine across the country, progressive Democrats who want to be a voice of the people and can take those voices to DC and legalize it.
All right. And also in your campaign, you talk about overturning Citizens United. So, look, I'm against money in politics, and it's quite clear that money in politics is crippling our democracy. So how do you plan on dealing with this? And also, as a quick follow-up, who are some of the key players that are right now supporting the incumbent that are probably giving in their corporate donations to him to make sure he has another term into office? I mean, who are some of the key players that are trying to basically stop your campaign?
Yeah, so to answer your first question, to end Citizens United, we can have an amendment that blocks corporate dollars. We don't have to necessarily overturn Citizens United if we do it through an amendment route, but of course, we do need to get money out of politics. As for who has bought and paid for Bill Foster, he sits in a financial services, and he's taken $1.4 million from corporate banks and hedge fund managers. He's taken $600,000 from pharmaceutical, big pharma and insurance. He's now taking money from ExxonMobil, fossil fuels. So we're seeing an ongoing trend here that he's someone who is listening to his wealthy donors and not the people who've elected him.
All right, that's fantastic. But also, I've noticed something about your campaign. Your campaign has got a lot of endorsement for a lot of grassroots organizations, most notably 3 subgroups of Our Revolution. Could you please name them out real quickly for our viewers and subscribers? And also, I know that your campaign right now also reached out to the National Our Revolution group. So here's hoping that they actually consider endorsing your campaign, because it should be a huge boost. Because from what I'm hearing about the current incumbent, progressives and independents can't rely on him.
Yeah, so Will County Progressives here locally endorsed me. The Kane County Progressives endorsed me. Our Revolution, Buffalo Grove endorsed me. They've all endorsed me through the national, like you said. Also today, we'll be announcing that I picked up the Sunrise movement in the Chicago hub, and they'll be submitting me for a national endorsement as well. And we also have the local DSA endorsement.
Well, that's fantastic. It's quite clear that now more than ever, people need to step up and get involved. But also, you on your campaign website, you're also talking about improvements to education. So in regards to this, I would like to ask your thoughts on student debt. Right now, it's something that's crippling a lot of Americans. And I think now more than ever, there should be a form of student debt relief. Where do you stand on this issue? What is your policy?
Yeah, I do think we need to have loan forgiveness. It's unfortunate that we've gotten to the point where they can these companies, these financial companies can profit off of education. I do believe that pre-K through either trade school or 4-year university should be, public. You can go for free throughout those schooling. I think it hampers future generations, whether it's businesses or innovation. When we saddle Americans with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt before they even take their first job, I am supporting either Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren policies on how to pay for those. Of course, no matter who we get into the presidential, into the White House, which I'm supporting those 2 candidates, a progressive candidate, I think we need a Congress who's going to support them. And that's why races like mine are so important. All
right. So for our viewers and subscribers that they want to learn more about your campaign, find you online and on social media, where can they learn more about you?
You go online at electventura.com and wander every social media platform under Elect Ventura.
All right. So, Rachel Ventura, all the best to you on your campaign. Clearly, at least I'm rooting for you in the state of Illinois, because I think we need more progressives to take on the establishment machine. And your campaign is clearly gaining some momentum. Let's hope that after this interview, you continue to grow. And I think now more than ever, people need to fight for a better future. So all the best in this congressional race in the 11th Congressional District. Rachel Ventura, peace, and let us all do what we can to build a better future.